Welcome to Hood Champion Boxing and Sports. In boxing, you find a way to win or you find a way to lose. You know, like like I need some water. Anyway, man, Terrence Crawford is getting ready for the Canelo fight. And my understanding is Mack told Crawford that basically he's going to put him through hell, this training camp, to get him ready for September 13th when Crawford faces off against Canelo. But the concern I have, although Terrence Crawford's squad is comprised of a bunch of brilliant minds, could the squad want Crawford to win so much that they push him to the point of overtraining? And could Crawford want to win so much that he overtrains because he's trying to meet or exceed the performances of Floyd Mayweather, Dimitri Bivol, and I'll even incorporate Erislandy Lara. But I think Crawford, with everything he's working on, I don't know it all, but I'm pretty sure a lot of it's going to fall into the spreadsheet that I comprise, right? I'm pretty sure Crawford and his team know what they're doing, but what if they push too much? Because, you know, there are fighters who have overtrained before. And when they got into the big fight, you know, things didn't go their way. Now, for instance, when we take a look at the focus areas, strength and conditioning, the weighted vest road work, high intensity sparring, reflex and defensive drills, strategic film study. This is where Crawford and his team thrive. They identify focus areas and they focus. They have specific training, strength and conditioning. They're going to have heavy resistance work, explosive power circuits. They're going to have sprint intervals. But where the overtraining comes into play, and this is where I'm the most concerned about the Mack meltdown meter, where Crawford may reach a point where he's like, he needs to take a break. But then Mack pushes him beyond muscle fatigue, which is going to affect his reduced punch snap and is going to delay his recovery. Crawford cannot afford to show up in the ring with Canelo enduring these overtrained risks. Now, the weighted vest road work. Hey, we all know it. I just ran this morning. Just to let y'all know, I just came back from running, and I had my weighted vest on, 25-pound weighted vest. And let me tell you, that shit makes a big difference, man. I mean, I've been doing it over the last week, but I'm doing it every day, and everything all my training, I keep the vest on. That shit. After a while, when I was running, I was just running, breathing, no problem. I don't get tired, but it got a point where I noticed like my stride was starting to shorten a bit. And all of a sudden I started thinking, instead about the focus of getting up that hill, I started thinking about, goddamn, this weighted vest is on, and my breathing and everything. And all of a sudden, I wasn't able to lock in the way I wanted to. But the bottom line, the weighted vest road work is going to be good for long distance runs, sprints with, you know, I call it the magic vest. But the problem is, if Crawford is really jumping rope with the ankle weights every day, if he's sparring with the weighted vest on and ankle weights, you know, every day. Well, now you got the overtraining risk of joint stress, cardio plateau, CNS burnout, which is something that Terrence Crawford just can't afford to have. Now, the sparring, again, I'm hearing he's sparring with the weighted vest on against guys who are much bigger than him. I mean, that, if done properly, could be a huge advantage for Terrence Crawford going into the Canelo fight. But the high-intensity sparring and the specific training is, of course, Crawford is a switch hitter, but he's going to have guys in the ring who can switch hit as well, and he's going to have partners in there who are going to mimic Canelo's style. But the issue is with this, him fighting such big guys who are going to be trying to mimic Canelo, now chance of getting cut, chance of mental fatigue, and a chance of desensitization to pressure. Now, he can't become desensitized to pressure at all. He can't do that because then he gets in the ring with Canelo and maybe he's more comfortable than what he should be, and now he runs the risk of Canelo hitting him with something that Crawford would be able to brace for had he not become desensitized to it. Now, the reflex and defensive drills. Look, the slip bag, Philly shell reps, shoulder rolls, and just being prepared to deal with executing all of that while under pressure. But you could see where now, like Deontay Wilder is someone who I think in training camp, he almost, with Deontay Wilder, I could just see that he probably had rehearsed certain ways he was going to react to certain punches. And that's why when he got in the ring, Deontay Wilder in his last few fights just wasn't able to be as effective as I think he would have liked. But when it comes to Terence Crawford, and you talk about the overtraining as far as the slip bag, Philly shell reps, shoulder rolls, and just trying to be able to focus under pressure, you could have those reactions that maybe don't come naturally. And you could have some stiffness in the counterpunch timing. These are all real concerns. But then you had to come to the point to where, and I'm going to tell you just from preparing for training, for a lot of different things, right? This boxing thing I do is just something I enjoy. It's therapeutic for me. But I had a full career before this. I have small business that I run. I just like to talk boxing. But I'm telling you, you can sit here, man, and overthink things in business, and it can cost you. And if you're overthinking things when it comes to boxing, it can definitely cost you in the ring. So when you talk about the film study, just trying to analyze Canelo's traps, trying to understand his feints, and when in his timing shifts, when he's going to do certain things. Now you come in the ring and you're overthinking. It's a mental overload. And I like how some people describe it as analysis paralysis during the live rounds. And that's just not where a guy like Terence Crawford wants to be. One thing I like about Terence Crawford is he has always reacted instinctively in the ring. But if he's overthinking, I just think it's not going to be good. Because I have a feeling, I don't have a feeling, I'm pretty sure Canelo is coming in there looking to fire on all cylinders and step to Terence Crawford. It could work for Canelo, it could not work for him. But if Crawford's overthinking, it can work for Canelo because Crawford is no longer doing what comes natural. He's more trying to do those things that have been over-rehearsed in training camp instead of what he's been training on since he's been a little kid, and knows if I'm in this, if my back is on the ropes and I feel that contact, I need to react and either step into the opponent and clinch him, turn him, or look for an exit route. Maybe he trained if your back hits the ropes, then now you look to try to counter. But his whole life he's been training to find the escape route and get the hell out of there. Now he overthinks, he's on the ropes, he gets clipped. And that's just not going to be a good thing for Terence Crawford. Weight management. The good thing about this with Terence Crawford, somebody was saying, well, Crawford still got to cut weight. We got to be careful how he's cutting weight. Look, I do believe Crawford walks around about 180. But the good thing is he's not going to need a super strict diet. He's not going to be in extra sauna sessions. He's not going to have, daily weight checks and all of that. And if he does have a daily weight check, it's not because they're seeing, hey, where you at. It's probably just to make sure that they're getting to whatever the goal is so he can be ready for that moment in time weigh-in during fight week. But I don't expect Crawford, because he's coming up in weight in regards to the weight division he's going to fight at 168 from 154, 147. But really, he's just coming down. He's actually stopping 14 pounds shy of where he fought his last fight. So they could say he's gaining weight. Nah, he still has to cut some. He just doesn't have to cut as much. But as far as dehydration, energy dips, loss of muscle density from like dehydrating himself, that's not going to happen in this fight in particular. I do know that they're pushing him hard. Altitude training, track workouts. Look, the bottom line, everything with Crawford is his legs. He can't afford for his legs to get burnt out. He can't afford to have sleep issues. He definitely can't afford to walk into the ring against Canelo the way Earl Spence walked in against Terence Crawford, looking like he had no pulse. That, for Terence Crawford, is going to be counterproductive. And I know for sure I'll be able to recognize that, because just like everyone else, when they notice Earl Spence walk into that ring with Crawford, it's like, man, why does he look like that? Now, Earl Spence has always looked like he's half asleep. He looked like Droopy and shit, that little cartoon character, the dog with the lazy eyes. But Earl Spence did have a different look to him. And I think Earl Spence is a great example of a fighter who was overtrained. At the end of the day, Terence Crawford, media obligations, everything else, I just think he needs to be locked in mentally. He doesn't need to have any mental fatigue, and he needs to be able to get in that ring and perform. And I think the Mack meltdown meter needs to be managed and managed wisely, because just knowing that Mack said he's gonna push Crawford harder than he's ever done before, that for me, that creates some concern. You know what I'm saying? I think I have sons, 4 sons. And I'm going to give you a story. So my oldest son, he's great at all sports. But about 4 years ago, we have a court in the backyard. And every day I would make him go outside and shoot 10, 50, like 300 shots. And he got to the point where he was making like 8 out of 10 shots from every spot, 3-pointers. And my wife kind of got in his ear and was like, you don't need to do that every day. You can go have fun. And I had to tell her, yo, stop. I'm not overtraining him, because, I know when you can overtrain somebody. I was a fucking athlete. I know. But I told her, stay out of that. And as a result of him not pushing as hard as he could and her getting in his ear, I kind of lost control of that. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, now he's back on track. But even he says, man, I should have never eased up. I'm like, no, you didn't. We didn't overwork. And also mentally, you weren't being overworked. You know what I'm saying? But I did know when to throttle back, because there were some times where even he was like, I could see the mental breakdown where I was being hard on him. But for me, when I'm watching Crawford and Mack, and when I'm just trying to have a good understanding of what's going on in the training camp, I think it's best for them to push him places he never thought he could go, because Crawford is a special type of athlete. And the places that Crawford can go may, for the normal person, be overtraining, mental exhaustion, physical exhaustion, impossible to recover, overall physical fatigue that can't be resolved. And those kind of people get in the ring is where they'll have problems. For Crawford, probably won't have any problem at all. But everybody has a breaking point, and I do think with the Mack meltdown meter, they have the right squad to be like, hey, Mack, easy. I think even Crawford has a relationship with him where he'll say, I heard something snap, or I heard something this. Because they don't want to break. They want to break Crawford down and then build him back up. But they don't want to destabilize him. You know what I'm saying? That's not what they want. Anyway, some things that overtraining Crawford and his team, they need to be paying attention to is the chronic soreness that doesn't fade overnight. You can't come out now and go into a fight and you still have fatigue, you still have soreness. That's not what you want. You want to be 100% feeling healthy, know you put the work in, but not getting in the ring knowing that your legs are tight. You don't want to be like Manny Pacquiao talking about my calf muscles and shit like that. You don't want that. You don't want to have sluggish reaction times during mitt or during sparring, during fight week. That was one thing that everybody talked about with Earl Spence and Derrick James. Derrick James was catching Earl Spence with those mitts and looked like he dazed him. That shit is from overtraining. Then you look at the mood swings or irritability in camp. Terrence Crawford, to me, may have a little bit of a mood swing, a little bit of irritability, because he's a temperamental person. But it shouldn't be from diet, because he doesn't have to kill himself. But the overtraining is something that could affect him. And during fight week, we'll know if Terrence Crawford's locked in. But man, if he seems to be a bit more irritable than normal, then maybe there was some overtraining. Maybe there's some mental exhaustion. Maybe there's some underlying things there that won't surface until he actually gets in the ring with Canelo, and we're all watching saying, oh shit, this isn't looking good. But the one thing that really concerns me when it comes to Terrence Crawford and the Mack, like, don't you quit. Let me tell you something. Dead legs during track or ring movement. Crawford, Team Crawford, Mack, they can't afford for Crawford to get in that ring and have overtrained to the point to where he has what I call dead legs. He can't have dead legs, man. If he has dead legs, he's going to be a sitting duck. And Canelo's going to put the bing-bings on him. You know what I'm saying? Now, for those who feel like, hood champion, man, here you go again with another video. Listen, on this channel, we have conversations. You're going to like some, you're going to not like some. But it's just a conversation. You leave in the comments, whether you agree, disagree, or leave your opinion. I respect what everybody says. Even the 1% that uses racial epithets and says stuff. Look, it's a free country. You can do and say what you want. I don't even report people no more. Before I would report people for some of the comments, but now I don't, because I let the other subscribers chirp you up. That ain't my style. I just breeze by it. You know what I'm saying? 9 times out of 10, I just breeze by it. But there are fighters who overtrained and ended up regretting it. Now, when it comes to boxers, right? George Groves, when he fought Crawford in 2014, the rematch, Groves trained obsessively for the rematch. What ended up happening in the camp, as far as the issues, they admitted to peaking too early and feeling flat on fight night. The regret was that he said, I left the fight in the gym. And I totally understand that. I remember training for a fitness test when I was in the military. And I would start about 12 months out, and I would be running hills. That's all I like to run. You know, I like running hills. I'm used to that. That's what I've always done. But I'd be running hills, and there'd be some days, maybe like 2 weeks out, where I would run, after running hills for like 10 weeks, I would go and just run a flat surface. And man, I'd be sprinting that shit. Sprinting. Like for 3 miles straight, sprinting it. But I remember there were times where I got out there and like my shins were sore, my legs were sore, my feet felt heavy and flat like I was plodding along, and I wasn't able to pick up the pace. That's because I had overtrained and fatigue set in. But I stopped running for about 4 or 5 days, and then I was good. So the body needs to rest and recover, man. But I'm glad that George Groves came out and shared that testament, because George Groves, in my opinion, he should have beat Crawford. But it just lets you know, when you leave it all in the gym, bad things happen. David Lemieux against Gennady Golovkin in 2015. Lemieux focused heavily on power and conditioning because he knew Golovkin was a beast. So he overtrained his body and he lacked tactical sharpness because he was trying to come in there and be super conditioned and land hard shots. What ended up happening, he just couldn't make the adjustments mid-fight, and he got stopped in round 8. Kell Brook and Earl Spence Jr. in 2017. A lot of y'all should remember that fight. You may not remember the other fights. But Kell Brook was coming off that brutal loss to Triple G. He pushed very hard in a short period of time to make weight. Overtrained while cutting weight. It affected his stamina, affected his chin, affected his punch resistance. And what ended up happening is Earl Spence put the Dallas, Texas bing-bings on him. And he suffered another eye injury and admitted to being physically depleted. So stars lined up for Earl Spence to get that victory. But again, it just lets you know overtraining is real. And you even seen back from 2017, fighters being overtrained. And here in 2022, when Shakir Stevenson fought Valdez, Shakir looked phenomenal in that fight. But then we come and we find out that Valdez trained, super intensely to try to match Stevenson's speed and IQ. Now, this is interesting. There were rumors of over-sparring and mental fatigue, which is what I just talked about, watching video, trying to play out in your mind how the fight's going to go. So he was physically and mentally drained because they sparred him too hard and they just drilled too much on do this, do that, and if this happens, this happens. And Shakir can do this, Shakir can do that. Drained the man. It's crazy. His mind and body was out to lunch come fight night. Anyway, the regret was he looked flat and he looked more reactive than proactive. And in boxing, there's some times where you need to react, but it's times you got to be proactive. And he just wasn't able to do the things he trained on because he was physically and mentally fatigued because he overtrained. And this is what the concern is for Terence Crawford. Then Anthony Joshua and Usyk, the first fight. Look, man, Joshua bulked up and trained for power and endurance, which we all know that just wasn't the answer. And he overtrained for a style mismatch, and he lacked fluidity. And Usyk did what he did, just like he recently did to Dubois and everybody else since he's gone to heavyweight. But he admitted, he said, look, I needed a smarter, less taxing approach. And as a result, I lost the fight. So coming back to Terence Crawford, look, I just think the Mack meltdown meter and the Terence Crawford's temperament, I just think those two got to be in sync. And also the squad surrounding Terence Crawford. They got to sit here and recognize when the burnout could happen, and they need to make sure that they recognize that before the bell. Because if they don't recognize that Terence Crawford is getting burnt out or is burnt out, and he gets in the ring and that bell rings, Terence Crawford is going to lose. He's not the favorite to win the fight. Understandably so, you know what I'm saying? But you definitely is not going to be the favorite if it starts to get out that Terence Crawford has been overtraining. That Terence Crawford is having mental fatigue, physical fatigue. He can't be reactive. He can't be proactive. All the things he's done before in other fights, it's not working out. And the one thing that I seem to be the only one mentioning, the barnacles of inactivity that are clinging to Terence Crawford. That could be why Mack and the team are trying to push Crawford so hard, because they know he's been out the ring. He would have been out the ring over a year, and they need to make sure that Crawford is sparring hard, training hard, doing everything 110%, because they can't go in the ring and make excuses about, you know what, I should have took a tune-up fight. They can't do that. But as a result of not taking a tune-up fight and working hard in training camp, if they time it all right, they can strike the perfect balance. But if not, Terence Bud Crawford will be called Terence Burnout Crawford. And he's going to go up in flames, effing around with Canelo. Y'all keep cool. Shout out to the veterans, all 7 continents. In the breeze.